You know that they've reduced the age to vote to 16. I think about it, I'm like, my brother's 16. Like, how is he supposed to? What? So now that the voting age has been dropped, you need to drop your mentality as well. You need to understand that when you are going to a political rally, don't expect to see my mum and my dad, expect to see my younger brother.
A lot of the young people I've spoken to, they'll say they don't vote because voting is like picking the lesser of two evils. I don't know if you've heard that. It's like
okay,
either,
I've never heard that,
like,
I'm not gonna lie.
The different parties, like either of them don't really benefit me, is what I tend to hear from people.
You can literally change the trajectory of a country. It's crazy.
But I think a lot of people, they've kind of lost faith in voting because they think my vote is not going to make a difference.
It doesn't count, yeah. It's called hyper-individualism, where you think if the system's going to fail, I can save myself, I can save my family. And if there are enough people trying to save themselves and their family, there's no point for the system to even try to work. When you're making your manifestos, when you are writing all the things that you are going to do in government, please keep in mind that you're voting base. I think this is the new word. The voting base has increased, and you have to now consider the younger people.
If you've got a passion for something, you're never going to give up.
Are young people disengaged or just ignored in politics?
Let's find out. This is Youthology. My name is Forever Oji, and this is...
My name is Mahnoor Usman.
And we are both senior youth ambassadors at Attentive. Let's get straight into this topic. So, we finally talk about politics. It's like a long awaited topic here at Youthology. It's like, oh, when are we going to do it? When are we going to do it? What are your thoughts? What do you think?
Well, I think the question to start off with is, are young people listened to? Do the government ask for their opinion in many different things? Things like education. Are we as young people actually asked for our opinion in how the education system will be implemented?
Yeah, I feel like that's an incredibly valid point, because lots of the times I've had like my friends, people around me say that, oh, they just kind of implement stuff and see our reactions, kind of. But it's really important for us to really sit down with ourselves and ask that question: are we really disengaged, or are we saying things but then just being ignored? That's really. I know you were saying this before the cameras came on, but you mentioned something about like your sixth form.
Yeah, so when I was in sixth form, there was talk about how the government was going to implement a system where A-level English and maths would be mandatory. So the teachers really disagreed with that because, you know, not everyone is good at maths and English, and it's already mandatory at GCSE level.
Literally.
So, and if someone's not going into a career that requires those, why would it be necessary?
Bother? Yeah.
You know, it's just needing a lot more funding to go into those subjects.
That's
and,
another thing.
You know, people might not be interested in those subjects, but as young people, we weren't asked for opinions. Even the teachers weren't asked for their opinions on whether this should be implemented, but there was still discussion about like within the government, whether this should be implemented or not. And it's things, especially in education, young people are completely ignored.
Literally directly affects us as well.
Yeah, and the people that are making the decisions haven't been in schools or like colleges or universities in so many years, and yet they're making decisions on this without consulting young people
currently in the system. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense as well. With that makes so much, because imagine like you're studying a trade. Let's say you're doing electricals or something, and now you have to learn English, and you're like, but I don't need this, really. And most of the time when people specialise in sixth form, they go into things that they actually want to do, and they ditch the subjects that either they're not good at or they just couldn't understand. Some people see that transition between GCSE and A-levels as like an escape almost. Okay, I can finally ditch this subject. That's like the mentality for a lot of people. But I think one of the reasons is like people have low trust in the government as like a whole. And I think that's one of the main causes of, if there are a percentage of young people that are disengaged, it's because they don't have trust in the government. It's because they have what I like to call political apathy. They don't care anymore. It's affecting them, but like even if you knock on the door, if it's not open, what's the point? You get that kind of logic. It really is something, honestly, because it's a conversation that's been happening like on and off, in front of the camera, like even when the cameras are off. We always talk about this here in the studio. Like, are we really being ignored, or do we just not care anymore? But I feel like the way I think of it is, if you're ignored long enough, you start to disengage.
Definitely.
It doesn't matter how into it you are. If you see that you are talking to a rock, you will eventually stop. You'll stop, because it's like, I look stupid, I look dumb, I look like, I'm the only person who cares, I'm the only person carrying this burden, even though it doesn't affect only me. When you're ignored for long enough, you disengage. I feel like that's the same thing with all things, really.
I definitely agree. I think it would be a great idea for the government to actually speak to not just young people, but just people in the community.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like I often hear people saying like that they're not asked their opinions. Like people that are naturally more confident or more, more activistic type of people, they'll offer their opinions and go to like governmental places to, get their opinions
make their voices heard. Yeah.
But ordinary people don't really have the time to do that, or they might not want to. They might still want to get their opinion across, but they might just not have access to those opportunities. So I feel like it would be really great if the government could speak to ordinary people.
Oh yeah, 100%. I feel like with that, it's different personality traits. It's people's priorities. I know someone who is willing to walk all the way to Parliament by foot to protest against like cars and trains and things like that. And then there's someone who's be like, can't we just do it via Zoom? Like, I can't be bothered to actually go there. It's different people. We all want the same outcome, but like the way we're willing to approach it is very different. I feel like for the government to actually grab our attention and actually get us to feel like, okay, we're listening to you. What do you have to say? That like the ball is in your court. What do you want us to do? It's in this rectangle. I'm so serious. It's in here. Lots of people are on their phone. It's not just young people. I don't want to create a stereotype or like build around a stereotype that says young people are always on their phones, but it's the way to reach majority of the population. If you do not own a phone in big 2026 and you're above a certain age, people are like, how are you surviving? How are you getting around? How are you buying bus tickets? How are you checking your bank? There's so much that depends on our phone. I feel like that's one of the, I wouldn't say easiest, but it's one of the, it will have the greatest effect if you appeal to us if you come to us instead of us always running to you. If you come over to us to hear what we have to say instead of us always chasing you. I feel like that's something that's really important, because at the end of the day, the government and politics, they work for us. They're supposed to help us. We're supposed to be in this together to make sure that we continue and to make sure that we are progressing as a nation, as it is.
I think it's different ways of expressing us. Like you'll see that young people, they might be voting less, but online there's so many petitions that we'll put out and like we'll use like social media to bring awareness to issues. So it's not that we're disengaged, we're engaged in a different way.
In a different form, yes, literally.
Like, especially with online petitions, we've seen the rise in that so much, or I've seen the rise in that so much recently. I can give an example. But, like, things like voting, we, as young people, or, like, a lot of the young people I've spoken to, they'll say they don't vote because voting is, like, picking the lesser of two evils. I don't know if you've heard that. It's like
I've never heard that,
like,
I'm not gonna lie.
The different parties, like either of them don't really benefit me, is what I tend to hear from people. So they put more value in like going for specific things with the online petitions, for example.
Oh my God. With online petitions, you just reminded me, when we did our A-levels, you remember like A-level paper 2 maths was a bit jiffy and there was a petition, and when I say tens of thousands of young people signed that thing to make sure that they reviewed I think they actually did get, I'm not sure how far it went, I don't remember the statistics of it, but I know that quite a lot of people were like, it's like on WhatsApp, you know, when they said forwarded many times, you just seen that this link has gone across the United Kingdom to make sure that people are signing. I feel like that's a really important point that you've brought up. But I have never heard the lesser of two evils thing. I've come to think of it, because in a political party, I feel like it's more realistic to say that I don't agree with everything you're saying, I don't agree with everything you're saying, but I agree with most of what you're saying, so I'm voting you. I feel like that's kind of how it works, right? That has to be how it works. Because, I don't know, I don't think there's a political party you will vote for them on every single... There's something they're like, oh, I don't really agree with you with that, but you agree with me. I agree with you on that, and that means more to me, so I'll vote for you based off of that. Circling back, I just think they need to... really put in a conscious effort, and it's not just by politicians having TikTok pages that they profiles that they post in once in a while. No, I mean actually, even if it means live streaming things, even if it means having people in journalism that are going to break down because another thing is the amount of jargon. Oh my God. It's actually scary, because why do I have to like look up every word? Like, people have to look up every word you're saying, especially with younger people. You know that they've reduced the age to vote to 16. I think about it, I'm like, my brother's 16. Like, how is he supposed to? What?
Also, you know how they're going to do the social media ban? I find it crazy, because if you're going to ban the social media for under 16s, but then at 16 you can vote, how are we going to have that steep
there's a knowledge gap there. There is a definite gap.
I know that they are having like some gradual implementation of the social media ban, where like they're not going to immediately have social media again at 16, but there's like a gradual like increase.
It kind of like cuts off.
But even with that, how are you going to go from no social media at 15
to boom, social media, and you have to vote,
and having that much responsibility, especially since social media can be used to like gain knowledge of the different political parties and like different information, and learn what your priorities are for when you're voting. I just find it really insane that you'll go from, okay, 15, you're too young to decide,
the deep end.
16, you know, you're here.
The deep end. Another thing to add is that, like you've mentioned, we've gone from being 15, you're too young, you can't do this, boom, 16, you're in the deep end. You've got social media now, you have access to a wealth of not just knowledge, but social media is something it gives us as human experiences, because people come on and people like share their stories and things like that. So you've gone from that, it's like going from one extreme to another, but you don't even know who you're voting for. I think that's the part of it that is like, okay, that's where the real knowledge gap is, because knowledge about politicians, knowledge about politics, knowledge about government is not, let's face it, it's not readily available for young people at that age. So I feel like there is a lot of work to be done. Sincerely, I won't even lie to you, there is a lot of work to be done, because it's making yourself available, meeting these young people at where they are, cutting out I'm heavy on this, cutting out all the jargon and explaining it so that they understand what they're voting for. Because there's a lot of responsibility. I don't think people understand the brevity, like the immensity of responsibility that is given to someone when you can vote. You can literally change the trajectory of a country. You can now choose things like that, which is just, it's crazy.
But I think a lot of people, they've kind of lost faith in voting, because they think my vote is not going to make a difference.
It doesn't count, yeah.
And also another thing is, like, with politicians, they'll often present their policies that are more like beneficial for older people, because they might think younger people aren't going to be voting. So I feel like there's not much incentive for young people to vote, because they might look at the policy and think this is
none
not
of that
really
applies
for
to me.
Yeah.
None of that applies. It's like looking at a job description. It's like, well, none of that's for me. Looking at like, I get what you mean, because it's like looking at a manifesto from a politician, and you're reading through and you're like, well, none of this is for me. I mean, you're talking about pension. By the time I get to the age of getting pension, you won't even be there. So what are we doing essentially? What's the point if none of the things that you have promised the people apply to me? Am I not part of the people that's supposed to vote you in? Why am I not in the bracket? Why am I not considered in the things that you promised to do for us, basically? I think that's a really, really interesting point as well. Like I said, there's so much work to be done. And I feel like another thing is that it starts with the mentality of it. I think we just need to scrap out that mentality that we are too young, because if we were too young, they wouldn't have brought down the voting age. So now that the voting age has been dropped, you need to drop your mentality as well. You need to understand that when you are going to a political rally, don't expect to see my mum and my dad, expect to see my younger brother stood somewhere. Maybe not even because he wants to be there, but maybe because my parents dragged him. But you have to appeal to him now, because his vote also matters. I feel like another thing is, because you've lowered the voting age, you've increased the voting pool. So, and there's a lot of young people. Oh my God, there's a lot of young people in this country. And I think it was something as well that I saw, that it was like, when people were deciding if they wanted to give young people the right to vote, they were saying, what if a celebrity comes out? What if someone that's really popular on YouTube comes out? Every young person is going to vote for them. And if you're like, when I say young person, I'm not talking about 16 to 18, I'm talking about 16 to say maybe even 24, is going to vote for them based off of their social media presence. And then the actual people who think that they can woo us with like the long words and like all of that are going to lose because you're not appealing to us where we need to be appealed to. And a lot of people underestimate just how much of us there are in this country. So I think that's something that they need to put into perspective as well.
I think also for young people, like a lot of them might not vote because of the priorities we currently have. I feel like a lot of young people, they're focusing on trying to get a job and struggling with getting a job. So why would you why would you even consider voting when you're struggling to find a job, struggling even to find a part-time job?
Oh,
you know, your priority is going to be doing that rather than, you know, voting, especially when the politician doesn't even have any policies about improving.
It has nothing to offer to you specifically. Nothing. There's no job security for people of a certain age. There's nothing to give to you as an individual. So why would I funnel my time and my energy and my resources to you when you have nothing? It's really weird. It's like it's weird. Like, why am I giving to you but you have nothing to offer me back? I've got other things to be doing. At 16, you're deciding, okay, what A-levels am I going to do? Because the transition, again, between GCSE and A-levels is intense. You can go from appearing like an art student to wanting to do medicine within that short 8 weeks that you're given after writing your GCSEs. You've got things on your mind. Some people have to commute to college. Some people, there's so much that can change in that time. We need to make it such that investing in like understanding politics is not draining. It doesn't weigh you down. It doesn't make your life more difficult. It should be something that isn't necessarily passive, but it's easy enough for people to understand it and just go through it rather than just spending time and then not being rewarded. I feel like when you vote for people, the reward is that you get something that is promised to you. You get something that will affect you directly. So there's no point in funneling my energy into that if there's nothing, part of your promise has nothing to do with me.
I think it's also like a sense of loss of hope. Oh yeah. Because especially if you look at the NHS, there is funding going into it, but the funding isn't used correctly. And especially for like mental health services, and when you look at young people's mental health services, those things aren't really being, you know, funded properly. They're not very accessible. So as a young person, you're already thinking, okay, the government doesn't really care about, you know, how I'm feeling. I have to do this myself. Yeah. So I feel like that's just a lack of trust again from the government that you feel.
Yeah, another thing I wanted to bring in, because as you just mentioned that, and as you just said that the government doesn't care about you, and I just mentioned I have to do everything myself, it brought on this thing. So I'm Nigerian, and there's a lot that's been going on in Nigeria about like politics, and because our elections are coming up, so people are trying to say, okay, vote, blah, blah. There's this guy who came on TikTok, and I appreciate his take because it's really made me put everything into perspective. It's called hyper-individualism, where you think if the system's going to fail, I can save myself, I can save my family. And if there are enough people trying to save themselves and their family, there's no point for the system to even try to work. It's like, say, for example, now we've got public schools and we've got private schools. Imagine all the public schools are just deteriorating and they're getting worse and worse, and there's no hope for anyone who's going to a public school. You're even going to be looked at weirdly because everyone who's had even a slither of, just a tiny bit of wealth has gone to private school. So now when enough of the population has found their own way to survive, the government, whose duty it is to provide for people, they're like, well, they're already taking care of themselves. They don't really need us. We don't really have to fix anything. Yes, there's a budget allocated to us, but we don't have to. It's like the same thing with the NHS. Imagine with the NHS, enough people go private. There will be, I promise you, I've seen this in my own country, there will be no need for the government to actually care about the NHS. Because there's no point in fixing something if majority of the population has already survived, has already done what humans do best, which is adapt and move on. So I think that's another really interesting take, because if you don't make the young, because believe it or not, the young people are the future of tomorrow. If you don't make them feel secured, if you don't make them have faith in you as a government, then believe me when I tell you they will find a way out for themselves, and then there's not going to be a need for the government because, okay, what are you actually doing? What's the point of it? If I can survive on my own, I can take care of my bills, I can do education, I can buy my own food, I can cook I can even grow my own food. We don't need anything. Yes, we are living in your country, but we can be independent of your systems because you've never helped us and you will never help us. It's weird.
When you're already feeling the lack of support, you just go further
disassociate.
into it.
Yeah, you're just like, okay, well, it's obvious you're not going to do this. I might as well just step out and do my own thing. I might as well source my own education, source my own food, source everything. And then all of a sudden, all the basic amenities that the government is supposed to provide, and I'm just saying this is like a really bad scenario, for instance, all the basic amenities that the government is supposed to provide, there's no need to provide them anymore because people are surviving like independently of the help. Like they don't need, which is really going to bring up another issue with taxes because we're funding it. So what's the point of paying taxes if I'm doing the private schooling, I'm doing the housing, I'm doing everything myself? What's the point of paying taxes? What are you then using my taxes for? This is so deep. I really don't want to. But yeah, it can be so bad. And the thing about it is that with young people, it's like a snowball effect because it just keeps rolling and getting bigger and big. It just keeps snowballing into a bigger effect from a really small thing.
I don't even think it's just young people. I think people of all ages are losing hope in the UK, going to other countries to get work because they can't find it here, going private, like instead of NHS because the doctors or the GPs aren't giving them enough time or care.
Or there's not enough resources as well. I've heard like stories of there not being enough beds, but if you were private, you would almost be certain that there would be a bed for you.
Yeah.
So it's just, there's really a lot, and I feel like the sooner we start making young people or just people in general feel like you're not being ignored, we hear you, we see you, we are doing it. When we start to see that you are actually doing your best, it will give us the hope to be, okay, let's just stay here, let's just believe, let's just keep on going.
I think the solution to encouraging young people to vote isn't even young people specific. I think just general improvement in trust within the UK, like improving employability, improving the NHS system can drive young people to vote more. But that's just like going to have a knock-on effect
on everyone and every age group.
Engaged, being, voting more. I think it's also about improving the quality of politicians. We can't see all these things that we want to fix if we're not voting.
If we don't have the right people.
Yeah, if we don't have the right people to vote, and then if we're not also voting for the right people to come in. Because people that are in power now, they're not going to make those changes unless we vote the correct people in. But we don't have the correct people to vote in.
Absolutely. Speaking of the correct people to vote and speaking of the quality of politicians, if the quality of politicians or if their values don't align with the values of the people they want to vote for them, it leads to this thing that which is going to take us straight into our key takeaway, into this thing with the key takeaway is basically asking if young people we're not disillusioned at all. We see everything that's going on. We feel everything that's going on. But when the quality of politicians or their values doesn't match our values, there's no way to politically express ourselves. There's really not much that we could do. And when we take to the streets and we protest, it just, you can bear me witness that it doesn't really end well. More than half the time, it really doesn't end in the most pleasurable thing. It doesn't. People get arrested all the time, and it's just that lack of, I don't even know what to call it, but that lack of space to express yourself politically, when that doesn't exist, when you're saying, let's say you're the politician, you're saying a different thing to what I want to hear or what I want. There's really not a space for me to just fuel how I'm feeling. And when I take to the streets with a placard and I'm protesting, I get arrested, I get deemed as the bad person, and it just doesn't really end well all the time. What are your thoughts?
And then I feel like that just links back to voting of the lesser of the two evils, because you don't have a politician that you agree with, you don't have someone that will make the changes you want to see. So what do? Do you actually vote for someone that you don't really agree with the policies, or do you just not vote at all?
Which is, it's going to sound really weird, but which brings us straight back into the quality of politicians again, because if you don't have the right people, you can't vote. It's like having, I don't even know how to compare these now. It's like having A and B, and none of them align with you. But you have to vote one person, or otherwise you just don't vote, which is another really big problem again, because when the values of the politicians that are being represented by each political party, when they don't match your values, you get into like this slump or this habit of not voting. Well, I can't vote for them. Well, I can't vote for them. And then it just keeps going and going and going, and then nothing changes, which brings back hopelessness. So it really is tied to the values of the people that are coming out to contest. When people come up to be the politician that is represented, or that is representing a particular political party, I've just realised that they don't do any sort of aptitude tests. They don't do any tests to see their morals. They don't get... Do you know what I think they should do? You know how they make us... This is going to sound so weird. But you know how they make us when you're applying for a job? They ask you, when you say things like, I work well under pressure. They need to actually test you with some sort of pressure. They need to be put in some sort of, I won't say confinement, but they need to be genuinely tested, because I feel like in the heat of things, people's true personality, what they truly stand for, shine through. It's really, anybody can talk the talk. Anybody can talk the talk. I feel like, I don't know if this is too abstract of an idea, because I don't really think it happens anywhere else in the world, but I think when you want to be a politician, when you want to rule over a country, even if it's just a little part of the country, I think you should go through aptitude tests the same way doctors and nurses go through aptitude. I think you need to go through some sort of like, not necessarily training kind of, but more testing where you stand. They should be put into high pressure. We need to check how they work in a team. Do they work well in a team? We need to know if they're going to be like authoritative, like leaders are going to yell at everybody, tell them what to do. If they're team players, how do they work under pressure? How do they even divide labor? Division of labor is really important as well, because you don't want to assign all the menial tasks to a certain group of people, because people could do that subconsciously, unconscious biases. I genuinely feel like this might be crazy, but I genuinely feel like this might need to be a thing, really, because it's one thing to sign up to a political party and just be in an election. And I know this is a very watered down version of what probably happened, because as I'm not like incredibly well versed in that, but I think there needs to be a lot more. Is it scrutiny? Should I say scrutiny or screening of the people that come up and...
Both, I think.
Both.
Yeah.
They need to do some... Political parties need to do some work, because if not, the image of that political party is now tainted because you've brought up the wrong person to represent you, whose values you don't even... It's really long.
I think there also might be an issue with what you're proposing in terms of like, there might be bias in like who's actually picking the people that are right.
That's another thing. You know? Oh my God, that's another thing. Oh no.
So, we have to be really careful with if there are barriers in place, what will those barriers be? Is it, creating some sort of bias of who actually gets through to become, an eligible politician? So I feel like that might be a reason.
Thank you for bringing that up, because in my head I'm just thinking, well, if doctors have to be tested over and over, and they even have to, I think they have to like renew their license or something of that sort, then politicians should be as well. Then basically everyone that has a role that, like, when I mean directly impacts human life, they have to be tested as well. But as you've mentioned, there has to be I'm so in my school. There has to be like a mark scheme. They have to just weigh them across. They have to weigh them against something. But then who's weighing? The person who's the teacher who's marking the scripts, for instance. Do they have a bias? Do they have their favorite students who they want to see succeed? Like, that's another thing as well. But that brings us to exactly what we were saying at like one of the first points we made, I think, is how can you appeal to young people if you don't engage with them? Which is why I think it's such a good thing that we are senior youth ambassadors at Attentive, because it gives us that opportunity to really, that's literally one of the cores of what we do, which is engage, educate and empower. I feel like that teaches us. If any one of us was to be politicians, we would know a thing or two about engaging with people, because we've done it a couple of times. But in politics, I feel like it would be really difficult to appeal to us, your new voting base, if I can even say that, if you don't engage with us.
Yeah. And giving them the opportunity to express themselves in the way that they want to express.
Yeah, give us the freedom to express ourselves politically. And when you're making your manifestos, when you are writing all the things that you are going to do in government, please keep in mind that your voting base, I think this is the new word. The voting base has increased, and you have to now consider the younger people. You have to make sure that one of the things you're coming into office for is something that appeals to them and directly affects them and something that they would want to see. And the only way you can know what they would want to see is, again, if you engage with them.
And learning their priorities.
Learning their priorities as well is really, really very, very important, because different people prioritize different things. But then if you know that, okay, this is what young people want, okay, let's put that in the manifesto. That's not going to clash with anything else, but at least it's going to give us some leverage against any other political party, because maybe they're not thinking about that, or they're not thinking that far ahead.
Definitely. What an interesting conversation.
What an amazing conversation. I'm actually quite happy, because going into this, I was like, oh, I'm scared. But I'm happy we got to talk about this. I'm happy we got to I guess this is one of the ways we can express ourselves, isn't it? So I'm happy that we were able to do this. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this has been Youthology. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Forever Oji, and with me is
Mahnoor Usman.
We are Senior Youth Ambassadors at Attentive. Have a great day, and we'll see you at the next one. Bye.